Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, step into a story that feels both intimate and unsettling, where the walls of an ordinary apartment conceal the weight of terrible secrets. This is The Tenant by Freida McFadden, a tale of survival, suspicion, and the razor-thin line between trust and terror. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Novel Whisper Official, and comment below the title of the novel you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. The city was not kind to those who had nowhere else to go. Rain-slicked streets, neon lights reflected in puddles, and in the middle of it all, a young woman named Laurie shuffled forward with a suitcase that held a few pieces of her fractured life. She had burned through her last options, jobs lost, friendships broken, doors shut in her face. What she carried now was desperation and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could begin again. The apartment appeared almost too good to be real. A squat brick building on a quiet street, with a door that creaked open into a dim hallway, smelling faintly of bleach and something metallic. The rent was low, absurdly low for this part of the city. A fact that should have raised red flags. But Laurie could not afford to be suspicious. She needed shelter, a place to retreat, a bed to sleep on without worrying who might come knocking. The landlord met her at the threshold, a tall man with slicked back hair and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His voice was smooth, almost rehearsed, as he recited the terms of her lease. She barely listened. All she heard was no deposit required and ready to move in today. He handed her the keys with an odd kind of flourish, as if he were offering her more than just a place to live. The apartment itself was small but serviceable. A thin carpet, yellowing walls, and blinds that rattled against the glass. Yet to Laurie, it felt like salvation. She ran a hand across the counter, opened the fridge to find it humming with a weak light, and breathed in the relief of having a roof over her head. For the first time in weeks, her chest loosened. She told herself this was the beginning of something better. But even on that first night, the silence pressed in too heavily. She lay in bed, listening to the tick of the pipes, the sigh of the wind against the windows, and a faint creak that seemed to come from the apartment above. Though the landlord had sworn no one lived there. She tried to dismiss it, but the sound gnawed at her nerves until exhaustion finally pulled her under. Morning brought a kind of uneasy calm. She wandered through her new neighborhood, eyes scanning faces, wondering who might be friend, who might be foe. Returning to the building, she noticed the chipped paint on the stairwell banister, the mailboxes with names scratched out, the silence of doors that never seemed to open. It was as if the building breathed only when she wasn't looking. That evening, she met one of the neighbors, a woman with tired eyes and a voice that lowered instinctively to a whisper, as though the walls themselves were listening. "Welcome," the neighbor said, though there was no warmth in it. Her gaze lingered a moment too long, and before Laurie could respond, the door clicked shut again. Still, Laurie tried to convince herself that this was fine, that she could belong here. She unpacked her suitcase, folded clothes into drawers, placed a picture frame by the bed, one of the few remnants of her old life. The building was strange, yes, but she was safe now. That was all that mattered. And yet, as she drifted into restless sleep once more, the creak above her head returned. Louder this time, more deliberate, like footsteps pacing across the ceiling. Laurie opened her eyes in the darkness. Her breath caught in her throat. She remembered the landlord's words. No one lives upstairs. The truth, she would soon learn, was that in this building, nothing was ever as it seemed. The rules arrived on cream paper, with crisp black letters. The kind of paper that tries to make commands look civilized. He knocked right at 9, the minute hands hugging the 12 like a warning, and waited until she unlatched the chain before he smiled. That same polished curve of the mouth, that same stillness in the eyes. "Just a few housekeeping notes," he said, stepping one shoe across the threshold, as if the apartment had never been hers at all until he granted permission. He handed her the sheet and watched her read. No guests after 8 p.m., no overnight visitors, no loud music, no pets, no candles. Keep blinds closed after sunset. Do not enter the basement or roof under any circumstances. Report maintenance issues by text only between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Do not attempt repairs yourself. Do not block the vents. Do not tamper with the smoke detectors. Keep the hallway clear. Do not store items outside the unit. Do not ask about the other tenants. She blinked at the last line. "Is that usual?" "Very," he said, not taking his eyes off her hands. "Keeps the peace. You want peace, don't you?" She said yes, because that was what this place had promised her. Peace, and a door that locked. He scanned the room like a customs agent, noticing the open suitcase, the photo frame by the bed, the coffee mug she'd rinsed and left upside down to dry. "You're settling in?" he said. "Good. I'll need a spare key for my records." "I just moved in," she said. "I can get one made." He produced a small envelope from his jacket pocket, as if he'd expected that answer. "Already done. For emergencies." He laid the envelope on the counter and tapped it once with 2 fingers. "Inspections are monthly. Short, routine. We keep standards here." He turned to go, then paused, listening. The ceiling above them creaked, a slow drag across old wood. His smile did not change. "Pipes?" he said. "The building is elderly. You'll learn its sounds." Then he left, padding down the hall so softly she could not hear the door close behind him. Only the echo of the creak remained, like a footstep that hadn't chosen where to land. She read the rules again, the way you reread a contract long after you've signed it, searching for the trap that makes everything binding. The line about the blinds clung to her. The windows faced a narrow air shaft. No one could see in, not unless they'd climbed a ladder and stood inside the slice of space between brick and brick. She pulled the cord and watched the slats tilt shut. The room darkened. It felt like the apartment exhaled. All afternoon the building made small talk with itself. Pipes ticked. A radiator coughed. Somewhere a door clicked and clicked again. She tried to make the apartment answer to her. The coffee measured, the counter wiped, drawers organized, a rag threaded through the slats of the heating vent until it came out gray. In the back of the bottom drawer of the tiny kitchen, she found a scratch that wasn't quite a scratch. 2 letters carved into the wood grain, deep enough that your fingertip caught on them. She traced them once, then closed the drawer and told herself it had belonged to the cabinet maker. Not a person. Not a message. At dusk, she stepped into the corridor. The hall bulb hummed. Carpet seams lifted like tired eyelids. She knocked on the neighbor's door with the whispering voice, the woman from the night before. It opened a fraction, chain still latched. The same tired eyes and careful hush. "I'm Laurie," she said. "Next door?" A heartbeat. "Yes. Do you hear it?" Laurie asked, gesturing up. "The pipes." The woman looked at the ceiling, then at the rules folded in Laurie's hand. Her mouth opened and closed around a sentence that never quite found air. "Keep your blinds closed," she said finally. "He doesn't like rule breakers." "Who?" But the chain slid free just enough for the door to close. The latch clicked with a practiced decisiveness. Laurie stood there for a few seconds because leaving immediately would admit that she'd learned nothing. Then she went back inside, shut her door, and threw the bolt for a little extra courage. Night lifted itself over the city like a heavy coat. She tried to read, tried to scroll, tried to quiet her mind by counting the seconds between sirens and the subway's far rumble. At 10:03, the creak began again. Not a single complaint of wood, but a path. A slow walk from one corner to the other and back again. She pressed her palm flat to the plaster, heat from the radiator grazing her skin. "Hello?" she said, hating that she said it, because the landlord had insisted there was no one up there. Silence briefly. Then the softest scrape, as if whoever stood above her had crouched to listen for her too. In the morning, she marched to the staircase and climbed. The steps decreased in confidence as they rose, paint thinning, rails nicked with use. The top landing ended at a locked door with flaking white paint and a brass knob polished by many hands. A laminated sign hung crookedly. "Maintenance only." She pressed an ear to the wood. Nothing. Only her breath. Only the tiny ocean sound you hear when you want to hear anything else. "Can I help you?" He was behind her now. She flinched so hard, the sign bumped against the door and swung. "I thought I heard—" "Pipes," he said. "Water shifting through old veins. That's all a building is. Veins and bones. You get used to it. You said no one lives up here. No one does." He smiled again. "You don't trust me." "I don't know you," she said. "And yet you trusted me enough to move in." He took a small step toward her. The staircase seemed narrower. "The rules keep everyone comfortable. Follow them, and you'll be left alone." Left alone. She wanted that. She nodded and descended, aware of his presence at her back, counting each step as if the numbers could protect her. The next day she taped a hair across her doorframe. A flimsy tripwire a friend had once taught her when they shared a dorm and didn't trust the cleaners. If the hair moved while she was gone, she would know. She left for a few hours to walk and think, to buy groceries, to pretend the world outside still followed normal physics. When she returned, the hair was gone. Not fallen. Gone. The tape still clung to the paint, neat as before. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The blinds were down the way she'd left them. The mug still upside down. The sheet of rules on the counter, except now it sat perfectly squared to the edge. She had left it at an angle. She remembered the angle, a little chaotic because her hands had been shaking when she set it down. She texted the number at the bottom of the page. Someone came into my apartment. She watched the bubbles appear, disappear, appear again. Monthly inspections may occur at any time within business hours. The reply read, "Your safety is our priority." As per the lease, management retains a key for emergencies. She typed and deleted several responses, each of them a small flare, and then a whisper of smoke. She set down the phone and stood at the bathroom mirror, the kind of mirror that gives you a face you recognize, but do not love. Behind her reflection, in the corner where the tile met the ceiling, sat a dark fleck. She dragged the step stool over, climbed and peered. Not mold, a dot of plastic. She touched it with a fingernail and it shifted to reveal a pinhole. She was not the kind of person who knew immediately what to do. She was the kind who learned how to cope one instruction at a time. She pulled a dab of toothpaste onto her fingertip and pressed it over the dot, sealing it white. Then she turned the mirror to face the wall. It didn't make her safer. It made her feel like she was not letting the building stare back. At dusk, the neighbor's door opened a second when Laurie passed. A piece of paper slid out, face down. Laurie picked it up and turned it over. In hurried pencil, "Keep the blinds closed. Don't stand near the vents at night. If you hear it again, don't answer back. No signature, no apartment number." The paper smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and the cheap incense that sometimes drifted from down the hall. "Thank you," Laurie said to the closed door. She carried the note inside and tucked it into the rules, as if the warning belonged there from the start. She made a plan out of indignation. Flowers sprinkled thinly across the hallway outside her door. A strip of tape over the kitchen cabinet that had the carved letters, a line to show if the door opened. A second hair across the frame, lower this time, invisible unless you were looking for it. She went to bed early, lights off, blinds shut, every part of her waiting. At 9:52 the ceiling spoke. Not a creak, a definite footfall, then another, walking the line above her bed. She held her breath so hard her lungs ached. A soft tap at the vent, not inside it, on the metal grid, like a fingertip trying the temperature of a burner. Once, twice, she whispered to no one at all. Pipes. Naming a thing is supposed to weaken it. Something on the other side of the vent whispered back. 3 syllables, indistinct, like a person practicing a name through a mouthful of cotton. Then silence so abrupt it made the room ring. She did not sleep. She counted the cracks in the ceiling in the dark and waited for morning to prove she'd imagined everything. When light finally came, thin and gray, she opened her door. A single footprint marked the flower. Bare. Narrow. Pointing toward her apartment, and then away again. The hallway carried no other prints, as if whoever had come had learned to walk in the air between steps. She looked down the corridor towards the maintenance door at the top of the stairs. No sound, no movement. Only the steady hum of the building's old veins. The rules lay on the counter where she had squared them last night. She smoothed the page, folded it once, folded it again, and slid it into the drawer with the carved letters. This time she memorized the angle of the drawer front as it closed. If it moved, she would know. If it didn't, she would still know. Either way, the apartment had learned her name. The night did not forgive her. It pressed against the blinds like a living thing, searching for seams, curling through the smallest slits of light. Laurie had thought herself clever. Flour on the floor, hair across the frame, toothpaste in the pinhole. But cleverness did not ease the silence that followed. Silence was heavier than sound. Silence was a threat, pretending to be absence. She tried reading until the words blurred into black smudges. Tried watching a show, the kind with canned laughter. But each laugh track echo made her own room feel emptier. She turned off the screen and listened. And then it came. Low, drawn out, like someone dragging a chair across the ceiling. The boards above her bed groaned under phantom weight. Laurie's hand trembled on her phone. She typed a message. "Are you sure no one lives upstairs?" Her thumb hovered over send. Then she deleted it, because she already knew the answer that would come back. Pipes. Always pipes. She lay awake until dawn. The light finally arrived, grey, tired, reluctant, and she pushed herself out of bed with the heaviness of someone twice her age. Her eyes burned. Her chest ached with the pressure of a secret she hadn't chosen. The hallway reeked faintly of ammonia that morning. Someone had cleaned, but only enough to smear the dirt. As she left for work, she glanced at the neighbor's door. A faint scrape marked the wood near the handle, as if someone had dragged a key too many times. From inside came a sound like a muffled cry, quickly stifled. Laurie froze, waited, then knocked. The door opened barely an inch. The same woman with tired eyes stared out. "Don't knock," she whispered. "I thought—" "Don't, he hears." The door shut. The chain rattled into place. Laurie's skin prickled as she descended the stairs. On the first-floor landing, she passed another tenant. A thin man with greasy hair and darting eyes. He grinned too widely, revealing teeth stained yellow, and whispered, "New girl." Then he shuffled off down the hall, humming tunelessly. By the time she reached the street, the air felt like freedom. She inhaled deeply, greedily, savoring every car horn and passing voice. The world outside was loud, messy, alive. The building was a tomb pretending to be a home. That evening, when she returned, something new waited for her. A faint scratching at the inside of her front door. She froze, holding her breath, keys clutched in her hand like a weapon. The scratching stopped. She slid the key into the lock as quietly as she could, heart hammering, and pushed the door open. Nothing. The room was exactly as she had left it, except for the blinds. The cord swung gently, as though someone had just let go. The slats were tilted open, revealing the narrow air shaft outside. At the far end, across from her window, another window faced hers, a dark rectangle, empty. But as she stared, certain it had always been vacant, a curtain shifted. Just slightly, she pulled the blinds shut, so hard the slats rattled. Her chest felt tight. Someone was watching. Someone had been watching long before she'd noticed. That night, sleep came in snatches. Every sound jolted her awake. The radiator's hiss, the faint tick of pipes, the groan from above. At one point, she opened her eyes and saw movement in the dark. A shadow stretched across her ceiling, elongated, distorted, shifting, like someone pacing in the room above. She whispered, "It's not real." But her voice cracked, betraying the lie. The next morning, she confronted the landlord. He appeared at her door almost instantly, as though he had been waiting for her to call. His smile was polished, his eyes empty. "The blinds," she said, "they were open. You must have forgotten." "I didn't." "Stress," he said calmly. "It plays tricks on the mind. This is an old building. People imagine things. They hear things." "Like footsteps?" she asked. His smile stiffened for the first time. "Pipes," he repeated, with the finality of a judge's gavel. Then he leaned closer, his cologne sharp and suffocating. "If you can't handle the rules, Miss Holloway, perhaps this isn't the place for you." But it was the place. The only place she could afford. He knew it. She knew it. And so she swallowed her fear, nodded, and shut the door. That night, the whispers began. Not words she could understand, not language at all. Just the sound of breath sliding through the vents, threading itself into her dreams. She sat up in bed, covers clenched to her chest, and the sound stopped, as if whoever was behind the vent had been waiting for her to notice. Her phone buzzed with a new message. "Unknown number. Do you want to know what happened to the last tenant?" Her stomach dropped. Her fingers trembled over the screen. She typed one word. "Yes." The reply came instantly. "Look in the walls." She dropped the phone. Heart pounding. The room suddenly felt too small, too dark, too close. The rules didn't say anything about whispers. They didn't say anything about the last tenant. But she was beginning to understand. The rules weren't to protect her. They were to keep the building's secrets safe. Morning came with the aftertaste of fear. The text still glowed on her screen. Look in the walls. Like a dare she hadn't accepted. Coffee steadied her hands enough to turn the knob and step into the hallway, where bleach and stale air mixed into a thin, medicinal cold. Doors lined the corridor like shut mouths. She needed to see the people who lived behind them. She needed the reality of faces. Downstairs by the mailboxes, a corkboard sagged with faded flyers. Lost keys. A yoga class that had moved 3 years ago. A notice from management about fire safety, stapled over an older notice about hallway decorum. Names on the metal slots had been scratched, taped over, replaced with initials. She scanned for hers, then caught an envelope halfway wedged into the wrong box. E-March in looping blue ink. The postmark was recent. The thin man with greasy hair appeared at her shoulder silently, like steam. "That one's dead," he said, tapping the E with a nicotine-yellowed finger. "Post office is slow to learn." "You knew her?" Laurie asked. His smile was too interested. "I know everybody. I hear things." He leaned closer, breath sour. "You're in 3C, right? Window to the shaft? Keep it closed at night." He winked, then slithered away, muttering, "New girl." As if the words tasted good, she slipped the envelope free and turned it over. On the back, a small heart sketched in the same looping hand. She tucked it into her coat pocket. a weight she felt all the way back up the stairs. The neighbor with the tired eyes opened her door before Laurie knocked, as if she had been listening for footsteps. She kept the chain latched, but her voice softened a fraction. "You shouldn't carry that," she said, eyes on Laurie's pocket. "You saw? We see everything," the woman said, "and he sees us seeing." Her gaze flitted to the camera bulb at the end of the hall. That may have been a smoke detector, may have been something else. "Come in. Quick." The chain slid. The apartment inside was darker than Laurie's, curtains pinned together with binder clips, blankets stapled over the vents, a towel jammed along the threshold. The smell of lemon cleaner warred with the scent of cheap incense and something stale underneath. A single lamp under a crocheted shade cast a circle of weak honey light. "I'm Marina," the woman said, as if remembering manners was dangerous but necessary. "Sit. 5 minutes." Laurie perched on the edge of a chair that had seen years. Marina moved quietly, like someone who had practiced being inaudible. She poured tea from a scratched kettle and placed the cup at the exact center of a coaster, hands shaking a little. "What was her name?" Laurie asked. She drew the envelope out and set it on her knee. "E. March." "Emily?" Marina whispered. She smiled with her mouth closed. She liked bright sweaters in winter and never learned to walk softly. "What happened to her?" Marina's eyes flicked to the door, then to the ceiling. "He said she left. He says that about all of them." "All of them?" A shrug that wasn't a shrug. "Tenants move, tenants break leases, tenants forget to say goodbye. He's very good at saying they left." "Did the police?" "Don't," Marina said, too fast. She lowered her voice. "We don't say some words here. They echo. The vents carry them to places we cannot see." Laurie's palms felt damp. "The vents," she repeated, thinking of the toothpaste smudged dot in her bathroom and the cold whisper through steel slats. "Someone texted me last night. They said—" She paused. Even talking about the text inside this room felt like lighting a match in a sealed box. "They told me to look in the walls." Marina squeezed her eyes shut briefly, then opened them with effort. "He listens for that too. He has people. Tenants who like the rules. Tenants who want to be liked." She set the teacup exactly to the left of the coaster now, as if breaking her own pattern made conversation safer. "Passing messages is like swimming in a riptide. You can go out, but the current brings you back, knuckles wrapped smartly on the door." Marina's breath disappeared. She lifted one finger. "Wait." Then she crossed the room, smoothed her hair, unlatched the chain, and opened. The landlord stood in the hall like a full stop at the end of a sentence. "Routine welfare check," he said, and smiled at Laurie over Marina's shoulder as if they were strangers browsing the same aisle. His eyes dipped to the tea, the low lights, the towel stuffed by the door, assessing without appearing to. "Everything comfortable?" "Yes," Marina whispered. He tilted his head at Laurie. "Settling in? Trying," she said, keeping her mouth from shaking. "Good. Remember the rules, please. Quiet hours start at 8. His gaze hung a second too long on the envelope on Laurie's knee. Then the smile again, polished as a countertop. We all sleep better when we cooperate. He walked away without waiting for answers. Even his footsteps obeyed his own quiet hours. Marina shut the door, leaned her forehead against it, then drew a breath, like coming up from underwater. He likes surprise visits, she said. He wants to catch you being yourself. I wasn't doing anything wrong. That isn't the game. She reached for a notepad tucked into the couch cushions, scribbled a few words, then tore the page in half. She handed Laurie the bottom scrap. In messy pencil, laundry room, noon, alone. Then below it, don't bring the phone. Why? Because phones glow in places they shouldn't, Marina said. Go! He times how long we talk. Back in her unit, Laurie locked the door, set the envelope on the table, and stared at it until staring felt like a kind of trespass. She slid a butter knife under the flap, lifted carefully, and unfolded the single sheet inside. You missed our call. I'm worried. Please tell me you're okay. If he's being difficult, come home. You don't have to prove anything anymore. Love, Mom. The letters swam for a second. A daughter's life folded into 10 lines, and the word home used like a rope. Her phone vibrated where she'd left it face down. Unknown again. He knows you have it. Another text immediately after. Don't let him see the drawer. Her eyes flicked to the kitchen. The bottom drawer with the carved letters waited like a mouth. She walked over, pulled it open. The scratches were where she remembered. 2 deep channels that caught her fingernail. Ehem. She pressed the front of the drawer precisely to its angle and shut it gently until the seam of wood aligned with the cabinet face. If it moved, she would know. At noon, she left the phone inside the freezer, ridiculous but cold insurance, and went down to the laundry room. The sign on the basement door clearly forbade tenants from entering, and yet the laundry room wasn't quite basement, wasn't quite first floor, but a sliver of space in between, accessed by a narrow side hall that smelled of damp cotton. Fluorescent lights hummed. One washer ran with a rhythmic thud, like a heartbeat under a blanket. Marina stood near the far wall, hands in her sleeves, eyes scanning the corners. There's a space, she said without greeting. Behind the dryers, a crawl between walls. It carries sound everywhere. Have you been inside? Marina's mouth flattened. No, I don't go where I can't stand up. She looked at the machines, their round windows whirling. Emily listened. She said she heard someone reciting names in the night. She said the names got closer. Did you tell? Shh. Marina's head snapped at the door. Voices. 2 men passed in the hall, their talk cheerful, mundane, non-words. Weather, a game, a sale, practiced cover. The door didn't open, but the way they paused felt like ears pressed to wood. After a moment, the voices moved on. Marina slid something from her sleeve and pressed it into Laurie's palm. A tiny plastic disc with a hole, the kind that covers a screw head on flat-pack furniture. For the pinhole, she whispered. Better than toothpaste. Why help me? Laurie asked. It's dangerous for you. Marina's eyes shone with something like defiance. and something like grief. Because someone helped me once, because I didn't listen quickly enough. Her gaze softened. Leave if you can. If you can't, learn to be quiet in the right places. A shadow fell across the glass of the laundry room door. The landlord's profile, unmistakable, paused, then continued past without entering. Marina's shoulders lowered a fraction, only to rise again when a dryer thumped too hard, rattling in its cradle. "Go," she said, "and stop asking where the noise comes from. The question makes him angry." Back upstairs, a strip of paper lay under Laurie's door like a tongue. She picked it up. New words in different handwriting. We watch each other, so we don't disappear. No signature. Inside, the envelope from Emily's mother sat beside the rules, as if two manifestos had chosen the same desk. Laurie set both in the drawer with the carved letters, and felt, absurdly, that she was tucking the building's confessions into a box. Her phone vibrated again from the freezer. She retrieved it, fingers numbed, and swiped. A photo had arrived from the unknown number. Grainy, off-center, but recognizable. The bottom drawer of her kitchen, half open, the letters E and M lit by the fridge's weak bulb. The timestamp was from an hour ago. While she'd been in the laundry room, she typed with fingers that wanted to drop the device. "Who are you?" The reply, "The last one who thought the rules were about safety." A knock at her door. Soft, polite, then sharper. She peered through the peephole. The thin man stood in the hall, smiling too wide, hands behind his back. "Housewarming?" he called cheerfully. "I brought brownies." A paper plate jutted from one hand. "Come on, be neighborly." "I'm resting," she said. "Midday nap?" He chuckled. "Me too. Dreamed I was walking in your apartment. Felt so real." He leaned closer to the peephole, breath fogging the metal. "You should get better locks." A beat. "He might," he added sing-song, "if you ask nice." She kept silent. After a long moment, he laughed softly and retreated. Steps whisper light. When the hall quieted, Laurie slid down the inside of the door and sat with her back to it. Above her, the ceiling gave a thoughtful creak. From inside the vent came a draft that spoke in cool syllables across her ankle, like a mouth choosing words. She pressed her palm to the metal. It thrummed faintly, a low voice trapped in her throat. Her phone buzzed, one last time. "He keeps us quiet," the text read. "He always finds the ones who ask about us." Laurie stared at the vent and saw, not her reflection, but the suggestion of depth. The idea of a throat behind the grill and a building that could swallow whole. The neighbors were not refuge. They were weather. Warning of a storm already here. By the fifth morning, Laurie no longer woke from sleep. She surfaced from fragments, half-dreams, where someone whispered her name through the vents. Flashes of movement across the ceiling. The click of a lock, turning where no lock should exist. She rose with her stomach hollow, her body learning the rhythm of fear before her mind could. The envelope from Emily's mother sat on the counter, edges softening from the constant touch of her hands. She unfolded it again and again, tracing the loops of love and worry. A woman had waited for a reply that never came. A daughter had lived in this same apartment and vanished into silence. Laurie whispered Emily's name into the stillness, just to hear it alive once more. When she left for work, she paused by the corkboard in the lobby. The notice about hallway decorum had shifted slightly. Someone had added a new line in faint pencil beneath the print. Ask about the March girl. She touched the words, then quickly pulled her hand back. When she looked again, the pencil scrawl was gone. Back upstairs, the building offered her new secrets. A loose strip of wallpaper curled away in the corner behind her bed. She tugged gently. The paper tore down in a ragged line, revealing plaster. Beneath the plaster, faint outlines of ink. She scraped carefully with her fingernail until letters emerged. Don't let him inside. Her breath quickened. She leaned closer, saw more markings etched beneath the fading ink. Names. 6 of them, written in a shaky hand. The last one was Emily M. The rest had been partially scratched out, illegible. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number again. The walls keep records. Keep looking. She dropped the phone onto the bed like it had burned her. The message was too fast, too precise. Whoever it was knew exactly when she had uncovered the writing. Which meant they were watching. The next evening, the thin man, always smiling too wide, appeared outside her door again. He held a trash bag loosely in one hand. He says you've been peeling paper, he said softly. That's vandalism. Laurie's pulse hammered in her throat. I don't know what you're talking about. His grin sharpened. Sure you do. He doesn't like curious tenants. Makes the rent go up. He stepped closer until the peephole blurred his features into a distorted grin. You wouldn't want that, would you? She didn't answer. His footsteps faded down the hall. When she dared to open the door, the trash bag was still there. Inside, she saw a bundle of clothes. Women's clothes. Torn, stained, and smelling of mildew. That night she pressed her ear against the wall. The sound came faintly, like a radio tuned between stations. A woman sobbing, muffled and hopeless. Laurie clapped her hands over her ears, but the sobbing remained, seeping into her skull, driven by something between courage and despair. She moved her dresser, dragging it away from the wall with a screech. Behind it, she found a square outline, edges uneven, like a panel once concealed. She traced the seam with trembling fingers. The wallpaper here was fresher, pasted with more care. She scraped at the corner until the paper lifted. Beneath it, a gap, a hollow space. She pressed her face to the slit and peered in. Darkness swallowed everything. She reached for her phone, shined the flashlight through. The beam caught movement, something metallic, dangling like chains. And farther back, a shape slumped against the wall. For a heartbeat, she thought it was a mannequin. Then she saw the sweater. Bright, colorful. Her stomach lurched. Emily's sweaters. The phone flickered, then went black. Laurie yanked it away, chest heaving. When she looked again into the hollow, the shape had shifted. She stumbled back, kicking the dresser into place so hard it slammed against the wall with a hollow thud. A knock followed immediately at her door. Not the thin man this time. The landlord. Routine inspection. he called calmly. Please open. Her eyes darted to the dresser, to the faint seam she had uncovered. Sweat trickled down her temple. If she opened the door, he would see. If she didn't, he would know she was hiding something. The knock came again, firmer, more insistent. Miss Holloway? His voice purred. We don't break rules here. Laurie stood frozen, the rules still etched in her mind. No tampering, no repairs, no questions about other tenants. And she had broken them all. She slid the dresser tight against the wall until the wood met plaster with a dull kiss, and the seam vanished into shadow. A blanket over the top softened the outline. She smoothed her palms down her shirt, wiped them on her jeans, and opened the door with a smile that felt stapled to her face. He stood alone this time. No clipboard, no witness. The corridor light drew a clean edge along his jaw. Monthly inspection, he said, voice low, affable. You received the notice. There had been no notice. But the lease's tiny print had promised that there could be one without warning, and arguing about words would not keep him outside. She stepped back. He crossed the threshold the way a knife crosses fruit. No hurry, because sharp doesn't need speed. His gaze traveled without moving his head. Countertop. Sink. The rules folded in the drawer she had memorized the angle of. He touched nothing. He let his eyes do it for him. Blinds down after sunset, he murmured, as if complimenting a habit he'd trained into her. He strolled to the bathroom and paused at the mirror she had turned to face the wall. Creative, he said, amused. He leaned, inhaled, straightened. Mint, he added, the single syllable carrying toothpaste and defiance, and the fact that he already knew the pinhole was covered. I like privacy, she said. Everyone does, he agreed. In communal living, we balance preference with safety. He tilted his head, listening as if the room might offer commentary. Above them, a board murmured. He did not look up. Have you had any issues with noises? She forced a shrug. Old building. He let the phrase sit between them, like a pet they were both pretending to ignore. Then he crossed to the bedroom. A 2-second glance at the bed, the window, the vent. The dresser claimed its place like a defensive line. He stopped at its corner and rested his fingertips there, a pianist about to play. Rearranged, he said pleasantly. I like it better this way. People often change furniture to feel in control, he said. Sometimes the building disagrees. I pay rent, she said. The building can disagree silently. The smile. Polished. Of course. He did not push. He did not need to. He had a key, and time, and the rules. He stepped back and delivered a few small notices that were not notices. Garbage goes down at 6, not 7. Someone left lint in the dryers. A tenant will be moving in on 2. Please do not peel wallpaper because glue is expensive. And the building is... His eyes flicked to the corner behind the bed. Fragile. Welcome again, Ms. Holloway, he said at the door. We value cooperative tenants. When she locked the door behind him, her knees trembled hard enough to shake the chain in its track. She pulled the dresser a fraction forward, checked the seam, still invisible. She breathed through her teeth, until control returned like blood to a numb limb. A paper slid under the door an hour later. Creamstock, crisp black type, notice of lease violation. 1 line only. Tenant observed altering fixtures. A $50 fee, payable immediately. She stared at the word observed until letters dissolved. There was no appeal listed. Only a P.O. box, and the reminder that repeated violations could result in termination. She took the note to Marina like a child brings a broken toy. The chain stayed on, but the woman's eyes were soft. "He gave you a light one," Marina said, reading. "First fees are always small. They teach the shape of obedience. I didn't alter anything. You moved a mirror and covered a hole." Marina's gaze lifted toward Laurie's ceiling, then to her own. "He calls those fixtures. He likes words that bend." "He knows about the wall," Laurie whispered. "Behind the dresser." "Don't say wall near a vent," Marina hissed. "Say picture. Say bookcase." She pushed the paper back through the gap. "Pay it and stop letting him inside." "I didn't let. You opened the door." It was an inspection. Marina's mouth folded in pity that pretended to be annoyance. "You are new at this." Back in 3C, the air felt heavy, as if someone had boiled water recently. She opened the freezer to retrieve her phone like she had done once before, and found it already inside, screen waking to her touch. She did not remember putting it there. The small proof made her throat close. Paranoia dragged a chair nearer and sat down, unknown again. "He will touch your dresser when you sleep." A second message followed before she could answer. "He doesn't need to. He has people," she texted back without thinking. "Who are you?" The typing bubble came and went, like a heart stuttering through a decision. "Someone who learned too late that the rent is for silence," the reply finally said. That night, the neighbor with the too-wide grin whistled off-key outside her door for 5 full minutes. A friendly tune, the kind someone hums when rearranging knives. When the sound stopped, she waited a long breath, then longer. When she opened, a new paper plate waited on the floor. No brownies this time. 3 screws, silver. Identical to the ones that held her vent cover in place. She slept in flashes again, long enough to dream of stepping into a hallway that became a well and of hearing her name called from below. And then woke to find the house whispering in metal, air passing through teeth. At one point, she sat up because she felt watched and saw, across the room in the black window glass, the impression of a figure where a reflection should be. Not her. Taller. Still. She blinked, and the figure was only the geometry of darkness again. She told herself that was how shadows worked. Morning brought new angles to distrust. The drawer with the carved letters sat a fraction proud of the cabinet face, as if someone with large hands and poor patience had checked inside and shoved it closed without care. The envelope from Emily's mother lay precisely atop the rules now, centered like an exhibit. She hadn't placed it there. She would have remembered the neatness. She folded both back into the drawer and pressed until the wood aligned. She wedged a folded receipt into the seam as a tell. She would know if it rose. She filmed the dresser from 3 angles, then deleted the videos instinctively, revolted by the idea of capturing the room on any device that might already be compromised. She ate a dry piece of toast like medicine. She considered leaving and imagined him locking her out for safety. Imagined her suitcase on the curb. Imagined explaining to a cop that a building was eating girls. She laughed once without humor. Downstairs at the mailboxes, another letter jutted crookedly. This one with her name in a careful hand she did not recognize. Inside, a copy of the rules with a new line typed at the bottom. Inspection hours now include 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Compliance required. The lowercase I in required was smudged with blue ink, as if someone had pressed that key too hard. She folded the page and slid it into her coat. When she looked up, the thin man stood across the hall, staring at her and smiling as if they shared a joke. He raised an invisible glass in a toast and let it tip, spilling nothing. On the second-floor landing, the maintenance-only door gaped an inch, as though a draft had opinions. She touched the knob. Cool. From the scrape at the jamb, she could tell it had been opened recently, without care. She should keep walking. She listened instead. Behind the door came a low electrical hum like wrapped wires, and a whisper of paper shifting in a breeze that wasn't there. She should keep walking. She pushed the door. Darkness gathered just beyond the wedge of light. A step in, too, and her shoe found a worn runner, the kind laid to protect a path, used more than it should be. On the wall to her right, she felt bumps at shoulder height, at regular intervals. Frames, glass cool under fingertips. She did not turn on her phone's light. She knew somehow that if she saw the pictures, she would have to become a different person than the one who still hoped logic could fix this. A footfall on the stairs behind her. Not hers. Not quick. Deliberate. She pulled the door shut and kept walking up to the third floor with the even pace of someone who had always been on her way somewhere else. At her door, a new cream envelope waited. She palmed it, slid inside, chain across, breath held. Inside, the letter contained no letter. Only a single object laid flat against the paper, so it would not rattle. The tiny white plastic disc Marina had given her for the pinhole. Clean. Unsmeared. Returned. A knock, polite as a waiter, followed. She did not move. The knock repeated. She crept to the peephole. He stood there with that patient calm of men who hold all the keys. "You dropped something," he said through the door, as if returning a mitten left in the hall. "I found it near your mirror." The smile now reached his eyes, but what lived in that reach was not warmth. It was knowledge, the kind that makes arguments unnecessary. She pictured him in her bathroom while she'd been downstairs. His hand on her mirror, the toothpaste dab between his fingers, his careful removal of the cover so he could give it back with clean hands and a lesson. "I enter, and you will perform gratitude." She did not answer. After a time, his shadow slid away. The building resumed its low breath. She pressed her ear to the vent. Faintly, as if spoken into a coat sleeve, a voice she could not place said her name exactly once. Not a whisper this time. A test. Her phone buzzed. Unknown. He smiles when he wins. He is smiling now. In the dark reflection of the black window, she saw her own expression finally match the building's. All edges, no softness left. The cracks had widened until they were not cracks anymore, but a map, and every route on it led back to one face at her door. Polite and patient and certain, the smile haunted her more than the footsteps. A smile that made everything look ordinary, while stripping the word safe from her vocabulary. Laurie sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the vent, pulse rattling in her throat. She thought of Emily's sweaters, the carved initials, the sobbing threaded through plaster. Every piece circled back to him. And yet, he wore that smile like a mask, so polished, it had become his real face. She barely slept. Each time her eyes closed, she dreamed of the grin filling the peephole, teeth stretching too far, voice gentle as honey. We keep standards here. She would jolt awake, convinced the door had opened while her mind was distracted. By morning, the drawer was ajar again. The folded receipt she had wedged there as a marker lay on the floor, flattened by a shoe. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Inside the drawer, the envelope and the rules sat untouched. But a new addition lay between them. A Polaroid. Grainy, underexposed. Laurie asleep in her bed, her mouth slack, hair tangled across the pillow. The angle was from the ceiling corner, above her head. She dropped it like it was burning plastic. A knock followed seconds later. Not hard, not urgent. Measured. She didn't move. She pressed her back against the wall, holding her breath. Inspection complete, his voice said calmly through the wood. And then retreating footsteps, unhurried. Her phone buzzed almost at once. Unknown. Now you know what his smile hides. She wanted to run. But where? The lease, the money, the threat in every rule meant escape was not simple. And there was the truth. Leaving would not erase what she'd already seen. That evening, Marina slipped another note under her door. Meet me at the roof access. Midnight. Laurie's chest tightened. The rules forbade the roof explicitly. That meant whatever waited there was either salvation or the last step into a trap. At midnight she climbed. The stairwell smelled of dust and rust, each creak announcing her fear. At the top, the locked door stood waiting, but it was already ajar, propped open by a brick. Moonlight pooled across the landing. Marina stood in the shadows, her face thinner than before, eyes burning with urgency. Don't talk, she whispered. She led Laurie through the door onto the tar-covered roof. Wind tugged at their clothes, carrying city noise up from the streets. For a moment, Laurie felt alive again, reminded the world outside was real. Then Marina pointed. Across the airshaft, in the window, directly opposite Laurie's apartment, a faint glow pulsed. A single bare bulb swung, revealing a room stripped bare, but for a mattress and chains bolted to the floor. On the far wall, letters scratched deep into plaster caught the moonlight. Help me. Laurie's knees weakened. That's where she was, Marina finished. Where others were. She gripped Laurie's arm hard. He keeps them until they break, then sees they moved out. We never see them leave. We only hear the walls after. Laurie's stomach turned. The whispers, the sobbing. Not imagination, not pipes, people. We can go to the police. They've come before. Marina cut in. He knows how to greet them. He has papers, receipts, keys, smiles. Her voice dropped lower. And some tenants. They help him for cheaper rent, for safety, for attention. Wind whipped the word attention across the roof. Laurie turned toward the stairwell, suddenly certain someone was listening. In the shadows by the door, the thin man leaned against the frame, grinning, a shadow of a shadow. "Ladies' night," he said cheerfully. He took one step forward. Breaking rules. He won't like this. Marina pulled Laurie's hand, dragging her toward the far corner, where another access hatch led down. "Don't stop," she hissed. "Don't let him stall you." They clambered down the narrow ladder, hearts slamming, landing in a maintenance corridor Laurie had never seen before. Pipes hissed, valves dripped, the air heavy with mold. The sound carried strangely here, every step amplified, every breath returned, like an echo of someone else's lungs. A voice drifted down from the shaft above. Calm. Polished. Hiss. "Midnight meetings? Against the rules." Laurie froze. The words seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the building itself spoke. She pressed herself against the damp wall, gripping Marina's sleeve, and in the trembling silence that followed, one truth settled heavy in her chest. The landlord didn't just enforce the rules, he made them. And the rules weren't about peace. They were cages. 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 They moved like contraband through the maintenance corridor, Marina leading with quick, silent steps, Laurie following the pulse of fear in her wrists. The pipe spoke in cold vowels. Somewhere above, a door closed with surgical precision. Marina stopped at a T-junction and pointed left. "Stairs," she mouthed. Slow, they climbed to the third floor and slipped into the hall. No one. The bulb hummed, steady as a watch. Marina's hand squeezed Laurie's, a tiny charge of courage, then vanished. "Sleep with shoes on," she whispered, "and don't speak into glass." The chain slid at Marina's door, and she was gone, swallowed by quiet. Laurie stood for a count of 5, then 10, then stepped into 3C and locked 3 times. The apartment greeted her with its practiced innocence. Blinds lowered, counter clean, dresser where she'd anchored it. She went straight to the bathroom and froze. The mirror she had turned to face the wall now hung in its proper place again. Polished. A fresh oval of steam blur traced the glass, as if someone with warm breath had inspected their face inches away and decided to admire the work. Her throat tightened. She backed out and sat on the bed because the floor felt too exposed. The mirror reflected the doorway where she sat, then the window beyond, a slice of black air shaft, like a swallowed moon. She watched the reflection until her eyes watered. Nothing moved. That did not soothe her. Sometimes nothing was a trick. She killed the light and stood in the dark a full minute. Then the test she remembered from an article she had hated reading. Bright light on her side, dark on the other. She lifted her phone's flashlight and directed the beam at the glass. The reflection swallowed it bluntly. No bleed-through, but the halo wasn't quite right. The flare edged to one side, as if the light were kissing a second service just behind the first. She turned the switch on. The mirror returned her tired face, pupils too large, jaw tight. She raised a finger and touched the glass. Finger to finger, skin to skin. The gap between fingertip and mirrored fingertip should show a sliver of black if the glass was simple. There was no gap. Her stomach dropped. She dragged the stool under the mirror and ran a nail under the plastic caps that hid the screws. One was missing. The cap Marina had handed her at the laundry room, the one he had returned clean. She popped the others, found the screws, and worked them loose with the tip of a butter knife, hands shaking. The mirror lifted free with the weight of something that had been allowed to settle for years. She set it on the bath mat and stared at the space it revealed. A rectangular cavity breathed a little cool air, like a throat behind a closed mouth. Wires ran along the back. In the top corner, a black disc the size of a quarter looked back at her. Not a hole, a lens. Under it, flush to the drywall, a pin mic the color of dust, wired through a slit toward the stud bay. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown. Do not leave it open. Another message arrived before she could answer. He checks after midnight. She crouched and reached inside. Her fingers found a ledge of lath. Dust turned her skin gray. The cavity did not go far. Then it did, slanting to the right. A narrow chase that must run behind the medicine cabinets and mirrors of the stack of units. She felt the impression of scribbles on the drywall near the bottom lip, moved the light, and read the scratches. Emily. 3A. Noises like footsteps. She swallowed hard and reached farther. Something small knocked against her knuckle, plastic against bone. She pinched it and drew out a compact mirror, scuffed to cloudiness. Its back marked with a heart sticker, rubbed almost blank. Inside, a square of paper folded to the size of a postage stamp. She unfolded it with care. If you find this, count the tiles. Underneath, in smaller letters, he watches through light, tiles, light. Her gaze slid to the bathroom floor, then to the ceiling. At once, the room felt crowded. She stood and counted aloud under her breath, toe of her shoe tapping square by square. 20 along the long side, 12 across. In the ceiling, a frosted dome fixture sat off-center, its metal ring polished to a shine. She climbed back on the stool and examined it. No screws, a twist type. She turned it a half-inch, and it loosened. The dome slid into her hands with the faint complaint of old rubber. Behind the glass sat not a single bulb, but a plate with 2 small LEDs, bright even when off, and a tiny board wired with care. A camera's eye peeked through a hole in the plate, cleverly camouflaged by the LED's glare. He watched through light, not the pinhole in the corner. Not only, her hands wanted to break, to pull, to wrench. Rage pulsed hot as fever. The rules forbade candles, but this was the fire. She took a steadying breath, reseated the dome, and twisted until it locked. For now, she did not want him to know she knew. She would choose when to pull teeth. Back in the main room, the window's black rectangle stared like a second mirror. She stood before it at an angle, watching the glass for the faint, wrong movement that betrays a living watcher. On the opposite side of the shaft, a curtain moved, just a fingertip of cloth. She lifted her phone to record and stopped. The last videos she'd recorded had made her skin crawl. She lowered the device and forced herself still. Her reflection held. Then, in the far corner of the black glass, a shape formed behind her shoulder. Taller than her. A head. A suggestion of shoulders. She did not turn. She watched in glass. The shape did not breathe. It stood as if testing the space it had chosen. "Don't speak into glass," Marina had said. Laurie let the air in her chest leak slowly and reached for the wall switch without looking away. Light. Then the shape became only the wardrobe of shadows a room collects at night. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown. Good. He cannot see when it is dark on his side. Another text stabbed in. Cover the mirror. Not with toothpaste, with weight. She carried the mirror into the bedroom, leaned it facing the wall again, and slid the dresser tight against it so the glass became a secret trapped beneath wood. She tucked the compact and note into her sock, then into a shoe. She swept the dust from the bathroom into a paper towel and flushed the gray ghost. No souvenirs. No display of discovery. At 12:11 a.m., the vent began to whisper. Not weeping. Not breath. A humming that rose and fell like someone singing under their breath while working. The tune was nothing she knew. It was precisely the kind of song a person would choose if they wanted to sound harmless while carrying a heavy box. She lay still with her eyes open, shoes beside the bed, phone in her palm, and watched the ceiling make small complaints, a scratch at the door, a pause, another. The chain quivered lightly, then went still. She didn't move. She pictured him trying the weight of the lock in his hand. She imagined his smile, the one that smoothed the horror of a thing into etiquette. She counted her breaths to 100. When the scratching stopped, she counted to 100 again. The humming retreated, threading itself back into the ducts. In the thin hour before dawn, she dreamed an honest dream. She stood at Emily's window across the shaft and looked back into her own apartment. In the dream, the room was perfect and empty. Bed made, blinds even, rules folded precisely. Only the mirror hung crooked, and in its tilt, she saw another room behind hers, narrow and dark, with a chair facing a wall of feed screens. On those screens, her life. The phone vibrated at 4:03. Unknown, do not tell Marina about the ceiling plate. He watches her door, she typed. Who are you? Bubble. Gone. Bubble again. A reflection. Don't name me. He repeats what we name. She lay back and stared at the ceiling. The dome light glowed faintly with the ghost of current. Inside, the eye blinked red, then steady again. She rolled out of bed and unscrewed the vent cover, not all the way, but enough to slide a folded note inside. I see you. She hesitated, unfolded it, wrote beneath. Do you want me to call someone? She pushed the paper in and reseated the cover. A minute later, something pushed the note back from inside, with a soft, deliberate breath of air. The paper bulged, then slid out enough for her to grip. 2 new words in shaky pencil had been added exactly where she'd left a blank space. Don't answer. The message that Marina had given her now returned from the wall itself. Literal, trembling, proof. She covered her mouth with her hand to keep the sound in. Morning came pale and cautious. The drawer sat flush for once. No Polaroid on the counter, no cream envelope, like a scolding finger. She almost believed that the night had been a fever. Then she noticed the bathroom, the mirror she'd hidden, and the empty oval where it had hung. In its place, during the hours between 3 and 6, someone had mounted a new mirror. Identical. Impeccable. The plastic caps on the screws were all present this time, and when she lifted her finger and touched fingertip to glass, there was no gap. She turned the overhead light off. The halo flared wrong. He had replaced the eye before breakfast. Her hand steadied. The map in her head redrew itself. Corridors and chases, voids behind glass, lines of sight between lives. Eerie reflections were not hauntings. They were designs. She taped a dark towel across the new mirror, then dragged a bookcase to pin it. She stuffed a bath mat into the gap under the door. It would look paranoid to someone who called himself a professional. It felt like breathing to her. Her phone chimed one more time, a single line like a verdict. He fixes what we break, so we can doubt we ever broke it. Laurie stood very still and let the sentence lodge where fear had lived. And in its space, something other than panic took root. Not relief. A hard, thin filament of resolve. If he loved reflections, she would make herself into something that did not reflect. Not on glass, not in rules, not in the eyes of men who smiled when they won. Laurie moved through the next day like a ghost tethered to her own body. At work, her hands wrote notes she didn't remember. Her mouth answered questions with automatic politeness. Inside, her mind kept pacing the same track. The vent, the mirror, the Polaroid of herself asleep. The more she thought, the more she felt the building had wrapped her in its story, long before she'd signed the lease. That night, the apartment fought her for control. The towel she had pinned across the bathroom mirror lay folded neatly on the counter when she came home. The dresser she had wedged against the wall had been slid an inch to the left, as if mocking her memory. She tried to laugh, nervous, bitter, but the sound cracked into silence too quickly. She turned every light on. Kitchen, hall, bedroom, bathroom. The glow made her feel visible, not safe. The rules had told her to keep blinds shut. What if the light itself was another leash, another way of being tracked? She unplugged the lamps one by one until the apartment returned to grey shadow. Her phone buzzed. Unknown. He likes it when you stay dark. He hears better then. The words sank into her chest like stones. She typed back with sudden fury. Stop watching me. Help me, or leave me alone. The bubble appeared, held, disappeared. Finally, I'm helping. You don't want to spiral where I did. Spiral. That was the word for it. Each discovery twisted her tighter, drawing her deeper into a coil where nothing was stable. She had begun to doubt herself as much as the building. Had she left the towel folded? Had she shifted the dresser in her sleep? It was possible. And yet, the Polaroid proved she wasn't imagining. Someone was inside. Someone who smiled. At 2 a.m., the ceiling creaked with deliberate rhythm. Not footsteps this time, but dragging. A slow scrape forward, then pause. Scrape back, then pause. As if someone above were pulling furniture in circles. Laurie sat up, her body rigid, every nerve tuned. The scraping stopped. Then came a new sound, a whisper through the vent, syllables she couldn't pass but intonation unmistakable. A voice, not pipes. A voice testing her name. She couldn't stop herself. She whispered back. Emily. The vent hissed with breath. Then silence. Her phone lit. Unknown never answer back. She dropped the phone, pulse skittering. The words on the screen glowed like law. She curled on the bed, staring at the vent, waiting for it to betray itself. Morning brought no reprieve. In the hallway outside, Marina stood barefoot, hair wild, whispering to herself. Laurie touched her arm. Are you okay? Marina's eyes darted. He knows I met you. He smiles too much today. You saw him? Marina nodded once, frantic. Downstairs, with the tenant, laughing. She leaned closer. That's how you know. When he laughs, someone upstairs has stopped. The words chilled Laurie. She wanted to press, to demand more, but the sound of footsteps down the stairwell silenced her. The thin man emerged, carrying a toolbox, too clean to be real. He grinned, winked, and said, Fixing the pipes? Then he disappeared into the maintenance door. That evening, Laurie resolved to prove what she knew. She pushed the dresser aside, pried at the panel she'd uncovered before. This time she used a screwdriver from her desk drawer, working the seam until the wood groaned. The panel came loose enough to reveal a cavity again. She shone her flashlight, dust, chains, a mattress, and etched into the wall in jagged lines. Stay quiet. She snapped a picture on her phone, proof that would outlive the night. When she lowered the light, her stomach dropped. The mattress had shifted. Not memory. Movement, a hand, pale and trembling, slid into view. Reaching toward the gap, Laurie stifled a scream, stumbling back. The hand curled weakly, then dropped out of sight. Her phone buzzed immediately. Unknown. You weren't supposed to see that yet. The room seemed to tilt. She shoved the panel back into place, dragged the dresser across, stacked boxes on top. Her breathing rasped loud in the silence. Then the knock came. Slow. 3 times. She looked through the peephole. The landlord stood there, toolbox in hand, smile perfect. Pipes, he said. I need to check the vent. Her hand hovered on the lock. Behind her, from the wall, came a soft, broken sob. She kept her hand on the chain and made her voice steady. Now isn't a good time. Through the peephole, his smile held. Vent check takes 30 seconds. There's steam, she said. I'm not dressed. A pause. A soft chuckle, polite. I'll return. The weight of his presence lifted by degrees. Keys sounded once, lightly, as if he were obeying a ritual, rather than leaving for real. Footsteps retreated down the hall, then faded into the building's breadth. Behind her, the wall gave that broken sob again. It wasn't a ghost sound. It was how a body cried when it was past words. She dragged the dresser, heart in her throat, until the legs squealed and the seam came back into view. The panel was looser now from her last pry. She slid the screwdriver under the edge and levered slowly. Plaster dust sifted onto her wrist. The board bowed, then lifted. A thin, stale air washed her face. I'm here, she whispered into the dark, because not saying anything felt like abandonment. The hollow space was a wedge. Tight, angled again. The kind of geometry that happens when architecture hides mistakes. She flat-crawled, shoulder scraping stud, ear catching on rough lath. The beam from her phone cut a shallow cone through dust. The smell of old laundry and metal. Chains clinked once, as if small impatience lived in them still. "Don't!" a voice rasped, paper-thin. "Light!" She covered the lens with her thumb. Darkness folded closer. "Emily?" Silence, then, "Don't name me." He repeats what we name. She swallowed, throat dry. "I'm here." A hand found her forearm in the dark. Birdlight, fever warm, the grip of someone holding on out of principle. Not strength. She let the skin-to-skin tell them both they were not alone. "Water," the voice breathed. "I have some." She'd left a bottle by the bed. Idiot. She should have brought it. She backed out, elbows and knees, spine scraping, heart counting time. In the apartment, she moved without noise. She knew she couldn't actually control. Slid the bottle from the nightstand and listened at the door. The hall answered with emptiness that might be camouflage. Back to the seam, back inside, she pressed plastic to the hand until eager fingers found the cap, twisted, drank like swallowing hurt all over. "Thank you," the girl said, voice thicker now. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you." A breath that sounded like a laugh, if a laugh forgot how. "He's coming back." "I know." She forced herself to be methodical. "Is there another way out?" A tiny pause. "There's a shaft that touches the laundry room duct. Too tight for me now. Maybe for you. Farther in." She moved the phone again, a sliver of light at her jeans to avoid the lens betraying her from the outside. Farther along the crawl, the void widened into a cramped box, where the studs broke to make room for a junction. Her fingers found a lip, then a ridge. She slid forward until her shoulder dropped into emptiness, and she was looking through a lattice into another space, across the shaft, just where she'd seen the bare bulb from the roof. The room waited. Not a room, a cell. A mattress on the floor, chains bolted in a U, letters gouged into plaster by someone working with nothing but the determination in bones. "Help me." On the near side of the shaft, a rectangular hatch with a cheap slide bolt looked like a maintenance panel if you didn't know what to look for. On the far wall of this cramped box, a thicker stud was scored by 100 small notches. A prisoner's calendar, cut with a screw. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The sound obscene in a place that had trained itself so carefully not to make any. Unknown. 2 minutes. She killed the buzz with her palm and tried to breathe like the walls did. "Listen," the girl whispered, closer now, breath feathering dust. "If he gets inside, lie. Say you sleepwalk. Say you hear mice. Do not ask about me where he can hear." Laurie's anger sharpened to a point so fine it cut air. "How long have you—" "Don't number it," the girl breathed. "Numbers make it real. Real makes you loud." A vibration thudded soft through wood. The front door lock gently tried. The chain held. Keys whispered again. He would be timing her fear, logging it among the facts that made him sure of his control. She flattened herself inside the wall, body a plank, heartbeat fighting to be a drum. On the other side of lath, the apartment settled into a portrait of normal. The door rattled once, as if at a hinge. A polite knock. "Miss Holloway?" As agreed. He would have that default tone recorded somewhere, used and reused until it sounded like truth. When silence answered silence, he let a second pass, then another. His laugh came faint, as if shared with someone else in the hall. Then the slow retreat of shoes that never squeaked. He was not leaving for long. He had patience and several keys. Laurie slid deeper, tracing the wiring that hummed weakly. A thick cable ran from the bathroom light's hidden plate into this chase, then up. She pinched it between thumb and forefinger, feeling the faint warmth. She thought of him replacing the eye before breakfast. Of the mirror hung straight when no one asked. Of the way the light never fully shut off. She followed the cable's path until it joined a bundle wrapped with black tape and clipped to a metal strap. A junction box sat just beyond, cover loose, where a screw had been forgotten or removed in haste. Her fingers found the edge and lifted. Inside, wire nuts like bright candy-capped splices. She couldn't rip everything. He would know, but she could, maybe, make his seeing unreliable. She palmed the smallest connector and twisted until it loosened, then shifted 2 leads and tightened it again, with the indifferent care of someone finishing a chore. The dome in her bathroom would still glow. The feed might stutter. "Don't be too brave," the girl whispered. "He likes brave ones. He saves them for last." Laurie leaned her forehead against the stud until the wood pressed a line she would wear for an hour. "I can come back," she said, "with help," a thin breath. "He smiles when there's help," she swallowed. "What can I bring?" A pause. "Names," the girl said finally, and the word crawled cold. "The ones on the walls, write them somewhere he can't erase. Don't let us be rules and rent." Tiles shifted faintly above, air moving in a way that meant more than air. He was using other corridors, other keys. She slid backward, elbows tight, knees dragging. When her hands found the lip of the panel, she could reach the edge of the apartment again. She eased the board into place, pressed until the seam shrank to a hairline, slid the dresser across with a grunt. She swallowed halfway, stacked a suitcase on top, then put her body on the floor, ear to wood, breathing a script that said, "I am alone in here and doing nothing interesting at all." The keys came back. The knock was patient. "Miss Holloway." She opened to the chain and showed him half her face. "I'm sleeping." He glanced at the clock on the hall wall. She could not remember it ever existing there before, and smiled the way you smile at a neighbor lying about noise. "Inspections extended to 9, he said. "You received the notice." "I didn't." "You'll find it under your door when we finish." His gaze slipped past her into the apartment, not as intrusion, but as appraisal. "Is now better?" She considered the rules, the leverage, the chain that would buy her seconds and cost her hours. 10 minutes, she said, and closed the door long enough to count to 60. When she opened, the chain still across, she let him see her move through the space, like she had nothing to hide. She flicked a light. The bathroom dome glowed steady and bland. He looked first at the vent. "People think mice live here," he said conversationally, crouching, fingers on the grid. "But mice don't like diligence." She didn't answer. He stood, looked at the mirror. The towel hung taped and pinned beneath a bookcase. His eyes paused, then softened, as if at a charming eccentricity. "Privacy," he said. Of course. Of course. Any noises?" He loved that the question worked both as test and cover. "Pipes," she said, and let the word fit in her mouth like a stone she had no intention of swallowing. He kept smiling. "Good tenant?" His eyes tracked to the dresser. He set his fingers on the corner lightly, piano fingers again, and pushed. It gave an inch. He stopped. A man who liked to win sometimes prefers to win flamboyantly. Sometimes he keeps a note in reserve. He stepped back and put both hands in his pockets, thumbs out like he was posing in a brochure about modern management. "We all sleep better when we cooperate," he said, as if delivering advice that had helped many before her. "Then we're finished," she said. He tipped an imaginary hat and went. The paper slid under the door a minute later. Inspection complete. Violation cleared. Reminder: quiet hours begin at 8 p.m. It felt like absolution, written in smug. When the hall was silent, she pulled the dresser again, slid the panel open an inch, and whispered, "I'll be back." A breath on the other side answered. Not a word. A proof of life. At the sink, she turned the tap and let water run as cover. She pulled the compact mirror from her shoe and unfolded the note again. Count the tiles. She knelt and wrote names behind the peeled strip of wallpaper where the list had begun. Each legible, each line pressed deep with the anger of a pen on plaster. The half-scraped ones she could sound out. The initials, E.M., the ones Marina had murmured when she forgot not to. She added Marina's warning and the man with the grin, because some people deserve to be recorded, even if they're still breathing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown. "He will go to the room across the shaft now. He likes to sit there after he inspects you." She crossed to the window and at a slant peered into the black. On the opposite side, a light bloomed. A figure entered. He set a toolbox down and sat on the mattress, as if at a workbench. He faced the wall with the scratched plea and unwrapped something from a cloth with the care of a collector. A camera lens caught the light in his hands and winked. Laurie's fear hardened further. "Wire around wood." Across the shaft, he lifted his face and looked not at her window, but at the tiny lens hidden in her bathroom dome, as if checking a friend's gaze. He smiled, that well-practiced etiquette of horror. Then he stood, turned off the bulb, and the room became a square of night. In the living room, the vent sighed, and a whisper slipped through. Not a voice. A phrase like breath blown across a bottle. "Don't answer." She didn't. She took the 3 screws the grinning tenant had left on a plate and walked to the maintenance hatch she'd found in the crawl. From this side, the holes waited empty. She set the screws, turned them firm, and made one small corner of the building harder to open. For the first time since she'd moved in, she felt not safe, but positioned. She knew where the rooms sat relative to each other. She knew where he liked to be when he thought himself unseen. She knew a name to speak to her own courage and a list of others to speak to the world when she got out. Behind the plaster, a hand touched her knuckles lightly twice. Morse without code. Alive without noise. She touched back twice and let the map inside her settle into routes that led toward a single necessary act. Find the door into the room where he watched and drag the masks off the wall. Laurie lay awake with the plan forming jaggedly in her head. Not a full escape. She knew he could cut that short in seconds with one key, one polite inspection. But a step. A door. The one that opened into the room across the shaft, where the bulb had swayed, and the words, "Help me lift," carved into plaster. Morning wore the disguise of normalcy. She left her apartment with a tote bag on her shoulder, like any other tenant headed to work. Nodded to the thin man who hummed off-key by the mailboxes, and slipped a glance at the maintenance door on the second floor. Locked, brass dull with age. She kept walking, memorizing its scratches. That evening, she returned to find another envelope under her door. Inside, a single page of the lease, copied, with one clause underlined. Management reserves the right to relocate tenants in cases of violation. Her phone buzzed instantly after she read it. Unknown. He wants you afraid of being moved. He never moves anyone. They just stop answering. Her throat burned. She stuffed the page in her drawer of rules and names, pressed the seam shut with both palms, and paced the floor until the vent exhaled once like a sigh. She whispered into her sleeve, "I'm not leaving." That night, she waited until the hum of the building's breath sank low. Midnight. She tied her sneakers tight, shoved her phone in her pocket, and opened her door a hair at a time. The corridor stretched still and empty. She padded to the stairwell, descended, and placed her ear to the maintenance door. A faint electrical hum whispered through. No footsteps, no laughter. She tried the knob. To her shock, it turned. Inside, the corridor was narrow, lined with conduits and painted pipes. Fluorescence buzzed overhead. Dust shivered down with each step. She followed the path, turning left, then right, until the air grew heavy with mildew. Ahead, a faint rectangle of yellow glowed. She killed her phone's flashlight and crept closer. It was the room, the one across the shaft. She peered through a vent slat. The mattress lay there, the chains glinting. The letters gouged into plaster still screamed, "Help me." But now there was more. The wall opposite bore Polaroids, dozens of them, taped in uneven rows. Faces of women, all in this building. Some frightened, some asleep, some blurred in struggle. And in the center, hers. The photo of her asleep in her bed. The one she had found in her drawer. The scrape of a shoe froze her breath. She darted back into shadow as the landlord entered, toolbox in hand. He moved with precise calm, whistling faintly. He set the box on the mattress, lifted the lid, and drew out what looked like another camera plate, identical to the one she had unscrewed. He polished it with a cloth, humming, then mounted it into a panel on the wall. The thin man followed, grinning, carrying a stack of envelopes. He dropped them on the mattress like tribute. 2 fees paid. 1 tenant behind. Good, the landlord said, tone gentle, almost fatherly. He sorted the envelopes, flipping through papers. Records must stay perfect. Then his eyes drifted toward the Polaroids. He touched Laurie's photo, fingertips lingering. "She's clever," he murmured. "But clever breaks eventually. They all do." Laurie's blood iced. She pressed herself against the wall, willing her body to disappear. The thin man chuckled. "Want me to watch tonight?" The landlord shook his head. "No. She'll make her move soon. I want her to think it's hers." His smile curved, slow and satisfied. "It's always mine." They stayed only a few minutes, but each second chewed through her nerves. When they left, locking the hatch behind them, she crouched, shaking, her mind roaring with two truths. She had proof now, of the room, the Polaroids, the tools, and she had certainty that he already expected her resistance. Her phone buzzed softly. "Unknown. Now you see the mask." She exhaled, crouched low in the dark corridor, and whispered to herself. Not for long. Laurie didn't plan a rescue so much as she accepted that breathing and rescuing had become the same thing. She spent the day assembling small items that would not announce themselves if found. Water, 2 granola bars, a pair of socks stuffed into her sweatshirt sleeve, a pocket knife she had never used for anything sharper than tape. She wrote names again on the plaster behind her bed. Pressing hard, pressing deeper, adding Emily March Hole this time. No initials. And then she stood still and let the fear cycle through her body until it cooled into function. Marina opened her door to the chain and listened without blinking. "You won't get far," she said. "He makes the building a loop. Then we change the shape," Laurie said. "I saw the room. Across the shaft. I saw him there." Marina's mouth tightened. "He likes to sit in the rooms of the people he's erased. It keeps his books balanced. Will you help me?" A pause. "Only a little. Enough to make your chances better and my risks not meaningless." She slid a thin metal pick through the gap. "This opens the laundry hatch without the lever. There's a slot at the bottom. Come with me." "No." The word was soft and absolute. "I won't survive being brave again." She closed the door, then reopened it a sliver. "If you get her into the duct, head for the service stairs by the boiler. Do not take the front lobby. He stages kindness there." Back in 3C, Laurie slid the dresser, pried the panel, and went in with the careful, committed body of someone who knows the next 10 minutes will change a life or ruin it. "I'm here," she whispered into the hollow. A hand found hers. "Warmer today." "I thought you had run," the girl breathed. "Not yet." She pressed the water bottle into the dark. Small sips. A slow swallow. A quiet, grateful sound. "It hurts to be real," the girl said. "Keep me believing." "What's beyond this box?" Laurie asked. "We slip, right? We find the duct, then stairs." "Right," the girl whispered. "It narrows. I can't—" "You can." Laurie slid forward until her shoulder dropped into the junction where the chase bent. "We go when the vent sings. He hums when he patrols. We use his rhythm." It felt obscene to say it. It felt like stealing something he thought only he owned. The humming began at 12:12, a low tune laced into airflow. She shifted onto an elbow and guided the girl's hand to the lip. Now, they moved in a slow, jointed crawl. Dust rose and made them cough in miniature. The chase constricted to a tunnel that required one shoulder forward, one back, a wriggling labor that crushed dignity into need. Behind them, the apartment held its breath. Ahead, air cooled, tasting of detergent and basement stone. Laurie kept her phone dark, except for brief, hooded flashes to find the curve, the metal strap, the junction box she had left slightly askew. She felt the girl's breath against her ankle, a metronome of courage. A faint clang echoed from the far end, the laundry room kickplate flexing as someone shifted weight outside. She stilled. The hum faded. Silence replaced it, the bad kind. Her phone vibrated against her thigh, muted to a mosquito. Unknown. Go now. He's at the front. 2 minutes. She wanted to throw the phone into the duct. She wanted to kiss it. She typed with one thumb, crooked. Which way at the end? The reply came in half a second. Right. Service stairs. Exit to alley. She swallowed distrust like a pebble. Right, she breathed to the girl. Stairs. They reached the maintenance hatch. From the inside, the slide bolt glimmered with grease. Laurie fitted Marina's pick into the slot and twitched it until the bolt jumped back. A breath of laundry room air soaked them. Mildew, soap, heated dust. She eased the hatch outward. Fluorescent light cut a pale stripe across the girl's cheek. In that instant, Laurie saw her whole, too thin, eyes wide as if sight hurt, hair matted at the roots, jaw set with a discipline that had kept her alive. Hi, Laurie whispered, absurdly, like neighbors meeting in a hallway. Shoes. She slipped the socks onto the girl's feet, tied her sneakers tight, slid an arm under hers. Can you stand? For a minute, the girl said and did. Knees shaking, fingers tight in Laurie's sleeve. They stepped into the laundry room. Machines churned a cover of ordinary noise. The door to the corridor stood cracked. Laurie listened. Voices far away. A laugh. The building wasn't empty. It never was. Names, the girl said suddenly. Don't leave them in your drawer. I wrote them in the wall. He paints over walls. The girl's mouth twitched. Write them on something he has to stare at. Later, Laurie pulled her toward the corridor. Now we go. They turned right. The service stairs waited in a concrete throat, each step shallow, each landing stained. Laurie held the girl's weight like a promise. Down one flight, another. A low door with a bar. Exit. Alarm will sound. She glanced at the unknown's message. Exit to alley. She pressed the bar. The door didn't budge. She pushed harder. Nothing. A chain clinked on the other side, tied across the frame. Alarm disabled, someone had printed on tape and stuck under the sign, as if mocking the idea of help. Behind them, a new sound entered the stairwell. Soft shoes in careful rhythm, too regular to be chance. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown. Pack up. Turn left. Another door. Rage flared so hot, it clarified her options. No, she whispered to herself. She dragged the girl back onto the landing and wedged her behind the turn of the stairs. Sit. Head down. If someone enters, you aren't here. Don't leave me, the girl said. I'm not, Laurie said. I'm making a hole. She ran up one flight, cut into the maintenance corridor, and ducked into a narrow bay where valves clung to pipes like knuckles. She waited for the shoes to pass. They did. 2 sets, unhurried, voices low. Check the lower locks, a calm voice said. Her skin prickled. He was close enough to breathe her name if she gave it to him. When silence returned, she moved. Down again, back to the landing, a hand on the girl. Up, she breathed. They retraced, turned into another corridor that mirrored the first. The building's guts made mirrored lies. A door stood at the end, a twin to the chained one. She pressed. It swung. Cold air struck like a hand. An alley. Wet newspaper. The back of the city. Laurie gripped the girl and they leaned into the night together. A two-person animal learning to run. Left, the girl gasped. Shadows. They hugged the wall. Trash bins loomed like sleeping giants. Somewhere, a cat clattered a lid and made both of them fold into themselves. Laurie aimed for the street's end, for the slice of real night that wasn't framed by rules or paint. Her phone vibrated. Unknown. Good straight. Don't look back. She did not look back. But she heard it. The door they had used opening softly, as if set on velvet, and footsteps that did not chase because the chaser owned the ground on which they ran. She pulled the girl faster. A chain-link gate blocked the last 10 feet. A padlock gleamed. Laurie shoved. The gate rattled and held. She stared at the lock and saw not metal, but his smile. She crouched, slid the pick into the shackle, willing Marina's hands into her own. It caught, slipped, caught again. Sweat slicked her grip. The girl's breath soared behind her, quick and high. Keys! A voice called behind them, conversational, as if passing time in a grocery line. So many keys. His tone was mild and living room warm. Let me help. Laurie didn't turn. The pick snagged true. She twisted. The lock popped with a sound that was really only a click, but felt like thunder. She shoved the gate hard enough to bite her own shoulder. Go, she told the girl. Run. They burst onto the side street. Night opened clean. A bar's neon pulse. A bus sighing at a stop. The simple, stupid safety of other people existing. Laurie dragged the girl toward the corner, toward the glare of a convenience store. The bell over its door would be loud, the air bright, the cashier real enough to interrupt a nightmare. Her phone buzzed one more time. Unknown cross. Now. She sprinted. The girl stumbled on the curb. Laurie caught her, hauled, felt fragile bones hit her palm. They reached the crosswalk as the light changed. A car idled. The driver glanced, then away, not seeing two miracles at all. They made the curb. The convenience store glowed like a little stage set. Laurie reached for the handle, already tasting fluorescent salvation. The door was locked. The lights were on. The shelves were stocked. But the door was locked. The sign flipped to closed, though the clock on the wall inside read 12:47. A figure stood behind the counter, turned partially away. The profile was familiar in the worst way. That patient calm that enjoys arranging scenes. Laurie's scalp went cold. She spun, pulling the girl behind her. The alley door at the far end opened. The thin man stepped out first, toolbox in hand, grin fixed. The landlord followed. No toolbox, no rush. The smile in place like a costume that had melted into skin. Quiet hours, he said softly, as if reminding them of something neutral, like rent due on the first. We ask for so little. People walked by. A couple argued lightly. A delivery bike chuffed. The world did not tilt to accommodate their terror. That was the neatness of his design. He arranged fear to look like inconvenience. Laurie stepped sideways, putting herself between him and the girl. "You won't take her back inside. I never take anyone," he said gently. "They cooperate. They respect the rules. The building runs on respect." He glanced at the girl. "You look unwell, Miss March. We can get you water." The girl flinched at her full name, spoken like a neighbor, offering mail mistakenly delivered. Laurie felt the unknown's messages curdle into a single suspicion. She lifted her phone. "Who are you?" she typed. "Send." In the silence after the tap, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Reflex flickered across his face. Not surprise, more like pleasure at a trick well played. He did not take the device out. He smiled instead. "Let's go upstairs," he said, mild. "It's late." Laurie backed until her shoulder met glass. The convenience store's fluorescent glare pressed a reflection of her face into the night. In that reflected pane, she saw not one man, but three. The landlord, the thin man, and father inside the store, behind the counter, the cashier turning now with a key in his hand and that same practiced, ordinary smile. The building, she realized, did not end at the building. Laurie pressed the girl tighter against her side, spine rigid against the store's locked glass. Neon buzzed above, its hum blending with the city's sleepless breath. For a moment, reality trembled. The busy street, the arguing couple, the delivery bike, so normal, it nearly cancelled out the nightmare unfolding at her feet. But the smiles in front of her proved otherwise, 3 of them now. The landlord, patient and polished. The thin man, all teeth and humming breath. And inside the shop, the cashier with the same quiet curve of lips. Not clones, not masks, just people who had practiced the same shape of obedience until it became indistinguishable from power. "They all smile," the girl whispered. Her voice was raw, each word scraped thin. "That's how you know who belongs." The landlord took a step closer. No rush, no threat in his movements, yet his calm swallowed her strength. "You've wandered too far," he said softly. "The rules keep you safe. Break them, and the city will not help. You see? It keeps moving." He gestured at the traffic, the pedestrians, the open world that somehow refused to intervene. "Only we keep you." The thin man set his toolbox down with a clang. He lifted the lid. Chains glimmered, folded neat, coiled like snakes, waiting for warmth. He whistled tunelessly, as though preparing for maintenance. Inside the store, the cashier set the key down and straightened, watching without moving closer. Waiting, as if to confirm whether she would break further or fold into silence. Laurie's breath hardened. She scanned the street. A bus slowed at the corner, its lights blinking. Passengers shifted in their seats. She pictured herself dragging Emily aboard, shouting until someone finally looked at them and saw not 2 tired women, but survivors clawing for air. But the landlord followed her gaze, his smile never faltering. "They won't hear you," he murmured. "Noise is only noise out here. You scream and they will shake their heads, tell themselves you're unwell. Because that is easier than seeing the truth." Her phone buzzed. "Unknown, run. Don't argue. Don't stand still." Her gut twisted. His pocket hadn't moved. Yet her phone pulsed in her hand. She wanted to believe the message came from someone else, someone outside this loop. But she saw the flicker in his eyes, anticipation, amusement, as if he already knew what she was reading. Laurie shoved the girl forward. "Run!" Emily staggered, but obeyed, her bare legs pumping weakly toward the bus. Laurie followed, lungs tearing, shoes slapping pavement. Behind them, the landlord's voice rose, not shouting, but clear, authoritative, the kind of tone that stops traffic. "Tenant in distress, stop them!" A man at the corner turned. His expression hardened, not with concern, but with irritation, as if Laurie and Emily were drunks spoiling the night. He stepped sideways to block them. Emily veered, tripped, nearly went down. Laurie yanked her arm, righted her, pulled harder. The bus doors folded open. A driver leaned, puzzled. "Boarding?" "Yes," Laurie rasped. She hauled Emily up the steps, shoved her into a seat, and turned. The landlord was 20 feet away. The thin man at his side, both unhurried, both smiling. The driver frowned. "Fare?" Laurie groped for her wallet, hands clumsy, shoving bills at him. He accepted, tore a ticket, handed it back. The doors hissed closed. The bus lurched forward. Through the window, she saw the landlord lift a hand in a courteous wave. The gesture of a man bidding farewell to neighbors he'd see again soon. His smile lingered until the corner cut him away. Emily shuddered beside her, clutching the seat back with white-knuckled hands. "It doesn't end," she whispered. "Wherever we go, they're already smiling." Laurie squeezed her arm. "We're out. That's what matters." The bus groaned through the city. Laurie tried to slow her breathing, tried to believe the distance meant safety. She looked at the other passengers. A woman with headphones, a teenager scrolling his phone, a man in a suit dozing against the glass. Ordinary. Blessedly ordinary. Then the man in the suit stirred. Shifted. His reflection in the window faced Laurie directly, though his head was turned away. And in the faint glow of the streetlights, his mouth curved. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown. "Tenants never leave. They only change addresses." Laurie gripped Emily's hand, eyes locked on the reflection that should not have been watching. The city rolled past, vast and indifferent, but the rules had followed them. The cycle had not broken. The tenant's fate, she realized, wasn't about a building. It was about the people who kept the smile alive. And across the dark glass of the window, her own reflection stared back. Pale, trembling, lips pressed tight until the smallest curve threatened to betray her too, 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 betray her too.